SANDHAN, All Gujarat Integrated Classroom.
સેટેલાઇટના માધ્યમથી જોડતી કડી એટલે સંધાન.
Hello friends, today we'll discuss listening comprehension. Listening skills are very important skills. To become an effective communicator, you require 4 key skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing. But perhaps if you look at the scenario in general, people are paying much attention to speaking. Perhaps the highest attention that we are paying to is speaking, and perhaps the least attention that is being paid is to listening. And the problem is getting generated from this only. We have never ever taken listening practice as a serious part of the exercise, or we can say as a serious part of the learning process, especially when it comes to English learning. As we know that right now we are discussing the topic of listening through the satellite, through the SANDHAN program for scope. So far as learning of English is concerned, we have never paid much attention to listening exercises, listening practices, and perhaps that is something wrong. So today we will be discussing some important issues on listening and how can we improve our listening abilities, listening skills rather I should say. And listening comprehension is we can say a kind of exercise through which we can learn a lot of things about English language, or it can be even any other language, but listening remains at the base. If you look back in your own life, during your childhood you learned a language, whatever your mother tongue is. It can be Hindi, Gujarati or any other language, but we have learned our very own mother tongue through listening only. That means the very first step of learning a language in our life is listening. For example, if a Russian couple they have a newly born baby, and a baby is now taken away, and now baby is brought up somewhere in Bihar or maybe somewhere in Gujarat, which language the baby would speak in after few years? Obviously the native language. I mean, if in Bihar it is Bihari, if in Gujarat it is Gujarati. Even though the baby is a baby of a Russian couple, the baby would not speak in Russian language. So that is perhaps the importance of listening. So through the surrounding patterns, through the surrounding listening atmosphere, we do learn a language in our life. So it becomes very essential to pay much more, or we can say a little more attention to the listening exercises, to the listening practices as a part of learning English language. As we know that in IELTS and such exams, even there comes a module on listening, where students are supposed to listen to a particular exercise. They have to listen to a kind of audio recording, and then they have to appear in a test. I mean, they have to fill up their answers, right? But there are 2 different terms here that we are going to discuss here: listening and comprehension. So I think we are done with the term listening, what exactly it is. But what is comprehension? To comprehend something, that means to analyze, to go to the depth, to the roots of the topic, and to try to understand it with all its essence. This is perhaps what I mean by comprehension. And so far as listening comprehension is concerned, there are certain things that we need to keep in our mind, that while you are listening to something to learn English language, you have to pay attention to the sentence structures, to the grammar patterns, to the word selections, to tone of communication, I mean the mode of communication, the way you are listening to someone who is speaking, or I mean maybe it can be a recorded version. But while you are listening, you have to pay attention to the accent part, you have to pay attention to the pronunciation, the way the language is being spoken. And the accent is the only thing which creates the difference between two things. Which two things that I'm going to talk about is the way native speakers of English language, the way they are speaking and the way we are speaking. See, generally for us, English is to be considered as a second language. Prior it was a foreign language. Now days are gone and we cannot say that English is a foreign language for us. So EFL and ESL, English as a foreign language and English as a second language, we should definitely say that now it becomes English as a second language for all of us. So while you are learning English language, you need to listen to or we can say you need to expose yourself to more and more listening in English. How can we do this? Very simple. You listen to some English programs, English news channels, you read something in English, right? And try to find out variety of material. And see, we are living in 21st century, that is called digital era. So there are many more resources available even online. Through internet you can find it out and you can use it to improve your listening skills. So let us start our today's discussion on listening with certain fundamental things that we must be aware of. Almost 45% of time we spend in listening. As I said, that LSRW, it has popularly it is known as LSRW because the most of the time, the majority of time that we do spend on something, that is listening. So almost 45% of time we spend in listening. An essential management and leadership skill. Listening is very essential skill, right? Whenever it comes to your management skills, you need to listen to others. It is said that if you really want to be a good speaker, then first you need to listen to others. That means if you want that someone else should listen to you, first you should be mentally ready to listen to others. Even as a part of your leadership skills, your listening skills are very important part of it. A process of receiving it is, a process of interpreting something, and a process of reacting to a message. That is what we mean by listening skills. And see, before we move ahead, we must be aware of a difference between two terms, that is listening and hearing. Friends, when it comes to hearing, your intentions are not involved. I mean, you are not paying attention to something that is being heard, right? For example, right now I am speaking in front of you, and if someone else is making noise outside or maybe something else is making noise, I am not paying much attention to that. That is what I call hearing. I mean, I'll be hearing to those sounds, right? Sounds which they themselves come to me, right? That is called hearing. But when it comes to listening, that means I myself paying my efforts, I myself paying my attention to something and trying to understand, trying to grasp it. That is called listening. So this is the fundamental difference between these two terms, listening and hearing. Let us move ahead and let us try to understand types of listening. Because see, when you want to improve your listening skills, you must be aware of these four fundamental types of listening. These four types are appreciative listening, empathetic listening, comprehensive listening, and critical listening. Let us try to understand these four terms. What I mean by appreciative listening is the situation where you are just paying attention to something that you are listening to and something that you are enjoying, right? So you are just trying to derive the aesthetic pleasure out of it. For example, if a musician is playing something or maybe a singer is singing, someone is performing in front of you and you are listening to it just for the pleasure, just for the we can say enjoyment. That is called appreciative listening. And you are appreciating through your listening, you are getting some pleasure out of it. So that part of aesthetic pleasure is involved in appreciative listening, where you need not worry about anything. I mean, you need not pay much attention to the judgment part. I mean, whether something is right, something is wrong, singer is singing well or not, right? These are the areas where you are not looking upon. Fine. So that is called appreciative listening. You are listening, you are enjoying, and you are appreciating it. that is called appreciative listening. The second type is empathetic listening. So friends, what does it mean, the term empathy? Empathy, that means to show all your concern towards something. It can be a situation, it can be a person, it can be anything else. So empathetic listening, that means which involves your concern, your emotional attachments, your emotional involvement into that. That is empathetic listening, right? For example, a friend of yours is in trouble and he or she is sharing his or her trouble, his or her pain to you. At that moment, the way you are listening with all your emotions, with all your involvement, that is called empathetic listening. So empathy, that means to show your concern towards something. So this kind of situations, it demands for empathetic listening. See friends, basically listening remains listening. But technically, or we can say theoretically, if you look at the fundamentals of variety of listening, then these are the major 4 types. And the third one is comprehensive listening. When it comes to comprehensive or comprehension, I would like to say one thing, that the way in majority of the cases, the way the comprehension is being taught or has been taught, perhaps it is something wrong. I mean, see, so far as you friends are concerned, you students are concerned, you must have gone through some comprehension passages during your school days. Why these passages are always followed by questions? Why always followed by 5 questions only? And even in those 5 fixed, I mean fixed in terms of number of the questions, those 5 fixed questions, even the first and the last question, generally they remain same. First question is always what the writer wants to say in the passage, and last question is, I am sure that you are already aware of this, that give the suitable title of the passage to the passage. Why it is always followed by 5 questions only, and in most of the cases it remains 5. I mean, neither it is 4 nor it is 6. So perhaps this is a kind of stereotype method of teaching comprehension, learning comprehension, that we should remove. We should try to avoid this kind of stereotype characteristics in teaching and learning. So when it comes to listening, in terms of comprehensive listening, what exactly we are supposed to do? We are supposed to pay 100% attention to that. We have to analyze it, what we are listening to. We have to understand it, what we are listening to, and we have to grasp the essence of the speech that is being delivered to you. That is called comprehensive listening. For example, a classroom session, when a teacher is teaching and students are attending the class, this is perhaps the best example of comprehensive listening, where students are supposed to pay their attention to the teacher, and while the teacher is teaching, students, they have to understand it, analyze the message delivered by the teacher, and they have to understand the topic, they have to understand the subject, and through this process they have to grasp the essence of the topic that is being taught by the teacher. So that is called comprehensive listening. Fine. So appreciative, empathetic, comprehensive, and the last one, 4th one, that is critical listening. How does it differ? Critical listening differs from, exactly we can say it exactly differs from appreciative listening. As I said earlier, that in appreciative listening you need not worry about the judgment part. You need not worry about what goes right, what goes wrong in the message, right, or maybe in the singing or the performance or maybe speech. But when it comes to critical listening, you have to be very keen. You have to listen to each and every minute thing, right? For example, as a jury member, as a judge, if you are listening to someone who is performing in some television reality show, then it becomes critical listening, because as a judge, as a member in the jury panel, you have to pass on certain comments, you have to give certain remarks, you have to check it out whether the performer is right, where he is right, whether he is wrong, where he is wrong, right, and you have to pass certain judgments, certain comments on it. So that becomes critical listening. So critical listening involves the critical evaluation part. It involves even the judgment part in your listening process. Whereas these things are not involved, not included, not given much importance to in case of appreciative listening. So these are the 4 types. I repeat: appreciative listening, where you are listening, enjoying and deriving aesthetic pleasure. Empathetic listening, when you are paying your emotions, when you are paying your attention towards somebody's feelings and emotions. I mean, you are showing all your concern and involvement in the listening. That is empathetic listening. Comprehensive listening, where you need to analyze, understand and grasp the essence. That is comprehensive listening. And critical listening, when you have to be keen about the minor observations, and you have to be very keen about what is right, what is wrong, and you have to pass on certain judgments, certain remarks, certain comments. That is called critical listening. So after discussing these types of listening, let us move ahead. Traits of a good listener. Now see, to become a good listener, it's not that easy. And to practice it, I mean becoming a good listener, you need to keep these points in your mind. The very first characteristic of a good listener is being non-evaluative. Being non-evaluative. What does it mean? While you are listening to someone, don't try to evaluate the speaker. Try to evaluate the speech. That is being non-evaluative. That means never pay your attention, never focus on the speaker. I mean, who the speaker, how the one is saying or speaking, right? Instead of that, better you focus on what he is saying, what the content is all about. That is being non-evaluative here, right? So don't evaluate your speaker and try to evaluate the speech only. That is being non-evaluative as a part of being a good listener, as a trait of a good listener. Then the next is paraphrasing. Paraphrasing, that means as a listener, you should cross-check whether what you have understood, is it the same what exactly the writer wanted to convey? The speaker wanted to convey. That is called paraphrasing, right?